guys, welcome to episode 26 of the Sounds of Stadia podcast, the weekly show brought to you every Monday via podcast platforms and YouTube by myself, Chris, my beautiful co-host whose faces you can actually see this episode if you are watching over on YouTube, all the way from the magic of the cloud, the TNR to my Crash Team Racing, Tom and Richie. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello, how are we doing?
Hello there.
You can see our faces, we think.
We should be able to. We've spent quite a bit of time back behind the scenes trying to set this up, so we should.
I'm going to apologise for my face. This is just how it is.
Yeah, so we've theorised this for a while. We wanted to give it a test. So whether it stays like this or not, we're not too sure. But let us know what you think. Not off of our faces. Don't be too nasty. Just the format in general. We've tried to mix it up, and we've tried to. You've been asking for a while that we just show a bit more engagement. I think we all three of us agree that actually seeing our faces helps with that engagement, socializing, and that kind of thing. So this show is brought to you every week on Podcast. See what happens when you go live. Podcast, apparently, podcast platforms and YouTube, where you'll see us all live. So if you are listening on audio platforms, jump over to YouTube, check us out on our channel, youtube.com/Sounds of Stadia. Whereas this show, we bring you the latest gaming stories and Stadia news from around the world of video games. And gentlemen, it's been another busy week. We've had busy weeks pretty much every week since the launch of Stadia now. We've actually... It's been nice. It's been nice.
It's been good.
What I've quite enjoyed the most is we're getting video game stories now. It's not just tech stories or rumors and hearsay and all that. It's actual video game stories. What was that, Richie?
Anything coming soon.
Coming soon.
We got a lot coming soon, to be fair, so...
We got a hell of a lot. But speaking of things that are coming soon, Tom, we might as well delve into it, as it has been a busy week. Coming soon from your camera...
That's me on.
I was going to say, actually, before we do that, do you want to clarify? We do have our names, so
I am Tom. You know who I am. Yeah. We got Chris on my right.
No.
And we got Richie on my down. On my down. That's how I'm going to describe it. And even though this is also traditionally an audio podcast. As Chris said, check us out on YouTube because there's going to be a lot of this gimmick going on throughout the episode, I can imagine.
Yeah, we have to have fun with the new tools.
Yeah, of course we do. So we'll get straight into it. We'll get into the super sexy special Stadia Story segment, a.k.a. The News! No, still can't do it. Not even with visual cues of seeing each other.
If anything, we could pre-record this now.
Yeah,
just line the video sequence up and nobody will ever know.
Scripted podcast.
Yeah. Who knows?
We'll just fix it in post. It's fine. Yeah. We'll fix it in post.
Edit the video. Hours in post-production. Get CGI, get Weta Workshop in here and just
Absolutely.
Just make it all digital. Yeah. But yeah, actually, speaking of digital, before we do get into the news, obviously, we're all in pretty much self-isolation, I think, at the moment, working from home, some of us. Mm-hmm. People around the globe, the listeners, I'm sure you're all going through individual scenarios, I presume. But so obviously big pandemic on at the moment. Thoughts obviously with everybody affected. Just remember to wash your hands before you touch those game controllers and you do get in. But again, gamers were the kings of self-isolation anyway, so we might as well delve deep into the news. And speaking of everything that's actually going on, hell has finally arrived. Hey. So in some ways more than others, Doom Eternal is now out. It's on Stadia, day and date, April 3rd released, and not April 3rd release. Sorry, that's jumping ahead of myself. Picked up at $49.99. It's finally out there. Tom, you are our residential Doom Slayer.
Yep.
Tell us about it.
A residential Doom Slayer, aka Doom Guy. Doom Eternal. Bloody hell, it's good.
No pun intended.
It is good. Yeah, it is very, very good. I've had a chance to sit down. I haven't played a lot at the moment. I've played the first 2 story missions, but the premise of the game is it's very much a traditional Doom style game. There's a lot of running and gunning. It's very fast paced, very, very fast paced, and it's also extremely metal. Like I've never played such a
like the music.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. It's really just like it immerses you so much in the sort of like the hellscape, the gore, the rock music in the background. It's so good. It is brilliant. Like I know Richie's going to get so pissed off with
I can see his face
about this.
Right now. The reason being is I'm having to be very adult about this at the moment, and I can't afford it till payday. So I'm going to have to wait a week.
Well, it'll be well worth your wait, definitely. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of systems in the game that I've not had the opportunity to fully delve into yet. There's a rune system, there's weapon modifications, there's weapon skill points as well, full exploration of maps, secrets that unlock a lot of fun things like cheat codes and also additional soundtracks as well. You sort of center around a spaceship type. I can't really describe what it is because I still haven't played 2016, so I'm not fully sure where the game is based.
2016 was set entirely on Mars.
Okay.
Where I think that's where the original Doom was set. So basically, that's where I think the first Hell portal opened up.
Oh, okay.
But I think this one's on Earth, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So it starts off on Earth, but you very quickly sort of access I want to call it a spaceship, but I think they refer to it as the Citadel or something. But you essentially have this sort of like base of operations that you slowly unlock by collecting crystals, power sources, and you also access portals to new levels through this sort of Citadel. I think it might be called the Sentinel, actually. That's the name that's ringing a bell. But everything you unlock in the game can be accessed from that point. So that's where you access your soundtracks, your cheat modes, and things like that. But it's a classic. It's really taken that essence of classic Doom, like the old school Doom, and really brought it into its just into the 21st century, really, with like the graphical fidelity of it. It's beautiful.
That's basically what Doom 2016 did. It was basically imagine how Doom played back in the day. Well, this is the modern version of it. Where I think other versions of it between, often they went for a bit of a slower pace game, but Doom needs to be frantic.
I say prior to the 2016 version, there was another remake of Doom, wasn't there? That was more of a horror-based game, was it?
Yeah, they took it. I think so. I haven't played it, but from what I've seen, they did take it in that sort of direction. But then it kind of lost the feel of Doom.
Oh, this has definitely brought that back.
Constantly moving. Yeah, that was Doom 2016 did that. So
fantastic. And there is also a multiplayer mode in the game as well where you can play with people online, but it's set up as what's called a battle mode. So you essentially have, I think it's 3 players, so it might be ideal for us, gents. But you have one person playing as the Doom guy and 2 people playing as some of the archdemons within the game. And it's very sort of like asymmetric gameplay in that you're trying to kill the Doom guy while the Doom guy is trying to complete a level, for example. I think that could be a lot of fun for us to try out.
Hunt them down.
Definitely. Definitely.
Does it take any inspiration from the Doom movie featuring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? That we've all forgot about, no doubt.
Yeah, I had actually completely forgotten about that until you mentioned it.
I'll remind you of that piece.
Just the giant stockiness of Doom guy is enough to make me think back of old Dwayne Johnson, aka The Rock.
Have you actually seen the movie? Because I haven't. I just know it was received terribly well.
I have seen it, and you know what? As bad of a movie it was fun.
Didn't
they at one point go for in first-person shooter mode?
They did, and they also, I'm pretty sure they had a no-clipping mode as well, where that like a part of it where something was running towards them with a wall that wasn't there, and they flipped the switch, and the wall suddenly reappeared with the enemy like stuck in it. So
I remember the trailer was quite dynamic like that. So actually, a question for you, Tom, then linking in from the movie, which no doubt you can buy on 4K digital Blu-ray around there. How is the frame rate and resolution of Doom Eternal running on Stadia? Because it was a bone of contention for a few people in the media and the wider community.
Okay. Well, the case in point for me was Holly was down staying with me for the weekend, so she had the opportunity to actually watch me playing the game as well. And she commented on it, and she said this actually looks really, really gorgeous for a game. Frame rate is excellent. I haven't had a single drop in frames whatsoever with it, and the graphical quality of it has been top notch. I wouldn't be able to tell you about whether I'd notice a difference with 4K, because at the moment I'm still playing in balanced, so I'm still only playing with 1080p essentially. Haven't really pushed it to its limits really. But for me, just in 1080p alone, it looks gorgeous. I don't see the need for being able to up it any more than that.
Yeah, I think that's the case for a lot of people, and I know I have many my parents about them owning a 4K TV and constantly watching standard TV on the standard definition channels. And there's nothing worse. And every time I'm around there, I always move it to the HD equivalent. And that's just a bugbear that I have in my everyday life. But in terms of gamers playing this, I think you're totally right there. I don't think 60 frames per second 4K resolution is the necessity that a lot of news media outlets make out to be like the test bed, the kind of foundation starting point where these games should begin. Because I've said many times on the show before, but I've not looked at one game this generation and thought it's either ugly or it's running at a slow rate that interrupts the actual flow of gameplay. And I'm pretty sure in the creation of Doom, the developers have considered that massively. And yes, it can be pushed to its limit, but at its bare bones, the game's going to run fine regardless. So like I said, 1080p is probably more than adequate. And can you notice the difference? I know the definition between my parents up from standard to HD.
I think that's going to be the thing with the next generation, isn't it, Richie? It's sort of like we notice the difference between SD and HD. Do the next generation of gamers, do they recognize the difference between 4K and...
I'm not. I think some of them do, but I don't think we're quite there yet. Because for me, 1080p is still kind of the gold standard for video. Like most people's TVs will still only be 1080p, unless I get it if you have a 4K screen that you want it playing in 4K. But for Doom, going back to Doom, it's if it's anything like 2016, it's very much the frame rate matters more than the resolution for this game, because it's such a swift moving game. You don't want them drops and frames. I'd rather play 10, even if I had a 4K screen, I'd rather play in 1080p and get a smooth 60 frames than go up to 4K and play at 30 frames, because it is that fast moving, lots of projectiles on screen. You need to be able to see everything clearly.
Yeah. You're definitely right there. Again, the area I'm currently stuck in at the moment is definitely that you pretty much just hit it on the head right there. It's very fast paced, and there's so many things going on right there that the frame rate, it has to match it. It has to match it, or you just lose the experience altogether. Yeah. But it does it perfectly. Like I cannot fault this at the moment, and I'm pretty sure at the moment the reviews that are coming in, they're all 9s out of 10s, 9s out of 10s, 94%, and so on. But you're definitely getting good reviews across the board for it.
The one thing for me is because I played Doom on my base PS4, and I'm looking forward to being able to play this game without my fan screaming.
Best thing about it,
screaming from hell.
I've never played a game that's overheat. That's the only game that's you overheat my PlayStation.
The fires of hell literally burning through the console itself.
Yeah, when I was playing through Doom 2016, I literally could play for a couple of... If I was playing for more than 3 hours, I had to stop.
How to summon a demon with Richie.
Just to fix it. Yeah, well, the Doom Eternal PC scoring on Metacritic's currently sat at 90.
Okay.
So it's been received currently very, very well. And it just shows you that people have been clambering for this game. And I think it's had quite a good marketing. Even though it was delayed, I feel like the marketing push has been quite good for it. I've seen many billboards, many posters, and many digital market promotions pop up recently in the last kind of couple of weeks. And I think it's the delay on behalf of the game has actually benefited it quite well, because it's dropped at a time where there's no new releases. There is no really big titles. I know this week we've had other games drop out on Stadia specifically, but in terms of the wider system, I can't really think of anything exclusive from Xbox, PlayStation, other than maybe Final Fantasy, to really pull away from that first-person shooter market. I know we had Call of Duty Warzone drop the other week, but obviously Battle Royale is very... you either like it or you don't. I think you're either interested or you're not. But I think Doom is actually probably the biggest AAA game we've got for a while. It's probably the first one we're going to have for a while as well. Still,
Warzone as well. That's with it being a battle royale game. That's going to keep. If you're going, it's not a money that I don't think they're directly competing there.
Oh no.
You'll play through Doom, then you'll probably shelve it.
It's a single player title with multiplayer capability.
Yeah.
But it's a good single player title.
Yet?
Yeah.
No, I haven't had the opportunity to yet. Essentially, I'm waiting for some people to extend an invitation. So you guys out there in the community, hit me up at Daxis on Stadia. Let's get some going.
Let's get some. So what do you actually kill in the game? Is it?
It's
zombies, monsters, Martians, aliens,
it's
demons?
all of the traditional Doom enemies. So you've got imps, you've got zombies, you've got sort of like the weird marines. You've got cacodemons. You've got the Hell Knights. Literally everything that you've come across in previous Doom games, like classic Doom games.
What's that big red floating meatball looking head thing that I've seen a few memes?
That's the cacodemon.
Is that what that is? Is it?
Yeah.
Classic Doom.
I like me a giant floating meatball. One of the really good things I should add as well is the finishers that they've added to the game as well. So they've got very brutal finishers. So when you stagger an enemy, essentially, you can run in, mash your right stick in the R3, and just watch. Like, there's so many different animations I've seen for different staggers. Depending on the angle you approach an enemy at, you can stagger them and just slice a head off, grab their arm and start beating them bloody with their own arm, ripping eyeballs out. It's very gory, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, they had them in 2016, the glory kills.
Yes, yeah.
I think from what I've heard, they've added a lot more in here, where it's fairly limited in Doom 2016. But
it definitely feels like it, though. I've had so much fun with it, and there've been beautiful moments that I've just wanted to capture as well. And once again, with the Joy of Stadia, just hit the button and I've got it there. Usually I've been doing that for mostly finding secrets and the ways into secrets, though, just to remind myself for future playthroughs.
Excellent. So 2 things from that then. Glory Kills reminded me to shout out to Glory of Stadia. Wingy over there. It is his birthday today at the point of recording on Sunday. Happy birthday to Wingy and Glory of Stadia. If you've not checked out their podcast yet, jump over there with him and a few of his current colleagues, I suppose you'd call them. Fellow community members, listen to their podcast, really doing a great job. And he's actually set to be appearing on our very show next week. Brilliant. So we'll be excited to get him on as well and talk about all things Stadia and his podcast too. That was the glory kills that led me to Glory of Stadia. My second question was, you mentioned all the bad guys come from Hell, Tom. And I'm a fan of the Wolfenstein games. I got the platinum in the first one of that, and that had the throwbacks to the original Wolfenstein game within it. Is Hitler in Doom Eternal?
No.
Right, because he is in Wolfenstein.
Yeah.
So I just want to check that there's no overlap of Bethesda games there.
You've just hit something on there, because Doom 2016 did have classic levels, which you could find as secrets built into the maps.
Well, I've not seen it yet, so I'll keep you posted.
So keep your eyes out for maps.
You find a secret wall, classic Doom style, go through like a hidden wall.
Yeah.
And then you'd still be your character, but in like the old like sprite like graphics. With the enemies.
I hope they have. I hope they have. Haven't come across it yet.
Throw that nostalgia in. Yeah. So if it's not Hitler, it might be secret mini maps from the game at least. Yeah. It's a bare minimum. Surely Bethesda, you've thought of your fans in that regard. But actually, speaking of going back to older games, actually it nicely follows into if you actually pick this game up. I don't know if the date's passed or not. If you get Doom Eternal on
April.
3rd of April, is that the date, is it? So
yes.
If you pick it up before the 3rd of April, you will get Doom 64 for free later in the spring when it arrives. So coming soon, Stadia trademark caveat on that, and to other platforms.
Having a Nintendo 64 game on any other platform.
Yeah, it's a bizarre one, but Doom 64 is often overlooked as well as a Doom title too. But yeah, it's coming to Stadia, so definitely pick up Doom Eternal if you want to get that for free as well.
Yeah, I think we've spoke to one of our actually Luke, who's been on the show, Richie. I think you spoke to him in the chat specifically because he's on about getting. I think he mentioned Doom 64, brought it to our attention
on Switch, and he was tempted to get it, and I just went, well, actually, you've got Google Stadia, thanks to us. If you're listening, Luke, you're welcome. And so $49.99, you get both.
Win-win. These packaged digital deals that are going off. So yeah, fantastic. Richie, you'll not be buying it come payday, and then maybe we can get this 3-way journey through hell set off and running.
Yeah, I'll see you in battle mode, boys.
See you in the battle mode. Actually, before we jump into one of the next stories, I think off the back of that, we played a little bit this week of another new game that came to Stadia. Not new, but new still to Stadia. The Division 2 came out. This past week, we all bought it because the price eventually fell into our buying motives. And yes, so just to be clear, anyone who didn't check out Division 2 on the store, it initially launched at one price and very, very quickly changed to a different price within a matter of hours. In fact, I can't even remember what the original price was. Was it 30 quid?
It was. Wasn't it?
I feel like 29.99 for the base game.
Yeah, I think that was the discussion we had because I'm sure I said something at the point about if they'd knocked it down sub 20, I would have been happy to buy it. But I think at £30, I wasn't willing to pay for that. But interestingly, we've had a discussion with some other community members as well, and we think it might have been another classic Google Stadia time cock up, basically getting the 9 a.m.s wrong for different time zones, basically, because the game came out 9 a.m. GMT. That's when they added it to the store, but servers were in maintenance, so people could buy it, but they couldn't play it, and servers continued to be in maintenance for a number of hours. Come 9 a.m. Pacific time, we got a sale, so a few hours elapsed, and
so a few people got caught out.
A few people did get caught out, and they were very vocal about it on the official Discord channel as well.
Understandably, but I think Google again did react. I think on Twitter, I saw. By all means, just go for a refund. We'll refund you the money back and buy the game again at the cheaper price. I've just checked my receipt, and yes, it was £24.99. And like you, Tom, I thought not for a game that I've already finished before on other consoles. But then it dropped with a £16.74 discount to £8.25. And I think pretty much within the moment we all found out it dropped to that price point, less than a tenner, we all jumped it up, and we've joined the fellow agents out in Washington DC in the Division 2. And I was just curious from your two guys' opinions what you thought of the Division. So we played about 2.5, 3 hours together, maybe just below that. I just wanted your first impressions of a game that neither of you played before, but I've thoroughly enjoyed through from start to finish.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah. There's a lot of systems, so I think I'm probably going to have to take an hour or two playing on my own to try and get my head around all the different systems and stuff. So then when I'm playing with you two, I can do things a bit quicker, especially things like inventory management and stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to getting into some more.
Yeah, I think you can have two characters as well, can't you? You can have two agents. So we've got our agent that we created together, essentially, when we ran through the first few hours. And there is a separate slot that you could create another one, I suppose, if you want to mess around too.
That might be the way to do it then, because I can create another one for like story stuff, so I can focus a bit more on the story, and one for just playing.
I think it's one of those games that you've really got to immerse yourself into and get familiar with the UI. As you say, Richie, like become more familiar with the systems, because you sort of get bombarded with them very quickly. Like you have your cosmetic set, the things that you can actually see on your character. You have your actual inventory, like your armor, your holster, that sort of thing as well, your mask. And then you've got other systems like the mods for the weapons, like the different components you can have. And I suppose for 3 hours it was a little bit overwhelming, but bloody good game though. Had a lot of fun with it.
In playing what we did together, from someone who has played it before, I will show you now playing on that and played a lot in the Dark Zone, which is their PvP mode, and with a few friends on the PlayStation platform. Having finished that game, still have no clue about the mods and the some of the weapon attachments. This and that. I know how to mod weapons, but like you said, Tom, there's a much deeper system if you want to go into it. I think joining with the three of us, it was great because I was able to help you two out in terms of what certain things meant, what buttons to press, and how everything tied up. But also, I do think that'll have had a detrimental effect to your own brain kind of soaking up the information you need to. And I think, it's probably a good shout to actually start a separate character, go through the initial opening once again, and maybe do a few of the first missions and side quests just to familiarize yourself, but maybe in your own little bubble without two other people talking over you and asking questions. And when shit goes down, we inevitably encounter a group of enemies and everything. You're in the middle of it trying to explain something, and everyone's on lockdown.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I think games like this quite often it can be if you're jumping in with friends and from nothing. There's sometimes a bit too much going on. You're having a laugh and joke. You're trying to figure out the mechanics, the UI, and then you got the story. So when we were playing, I was just kind of skipping through cutscenes. Like I'll watch it later.
Yeah. Can we just take a moment?
I can hear you two sat waiting for me.
Can we just take a moment as well and just put a plea out there online officially right now to say FPS developers, can you please start communicating about your button mapping as well for different commands? Because I'm telling you right now, Richie, you get into Doom as well. When you get into Doom Eternal, those button combinations, like the button maps, are just going to absolutely fuck with you. Because the first thing I went to do to change weapon was hit Y or triangle. Yeah.
The correct button.
Hit Y to change to cycle through your weapons, right? Doom Eternal, nah, it's R1.
That's grenade, right?
No, why is grenade in Doom Eternal?
No, that gets switched over immediately.
Actually, no. Why? Yeah. Why is your flamethrower, which is another add-on altogether? You've got to try it. You've got to try it out. Yeah, you've got so many different weapons. But yeah,
they must have a reason for setting up like that. They must have thought this is actually the easier way to play it. When
this is our standard, damn it.
Yeah, because developers do optimize the control layouts. They do think about this stuff.
Yeah, I tell you what, they're going to have to optimize it for Doom 6. Yeah. The Nintendo 64's controller was something out of this well. So button mapping on that was all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually, in playing things like Ocarina of Time through an emulator and stuff, used an Xbox One pad, and that was quite a challenge to map it well so it would feel comfortable.
Yeah, I can totally imagine. But we'll certainly be playing a bit more of the Division 2 as we go forward. We did join. Did we start our own clan, or did we join a clan?
We joined one of the Stadia community clans as well.
It was at Ashes.
Yeah, Ashes to Ashes sent us an invite over there. I'm not 100% sure who set it up originally, but shout out to Ashes as well for getting us hooked up with that.
Yeah, and I think I've seen Chase as well from Stadia Talk.
Yeah,
to jump in and play a few hours here and there. And I think the good thing with the Division community we have out there, there's probably already I've already seen it in the friends list, quite a couple of people who've been online playing the Division 2, all at different levels, all different things of hours. And I think you mentioned it, Tom, as soon as we all signed in together, is it pops up with a message saying it does upskill the abilities, so no one's left out in the cold being level 5 when everyone else is level 20. It does match the power of your weapons and the strength of your enemies to that as well.
I think that's really nice as well, because if you've got a friend who plays on PC as well, obviously one of the huge benefits of this game is it's our first experience of actually having cross-play as well. So we actually have cross-play with Stadia along to PC. So that's really nice.
I am actually really worried about us three going into the Dark Zone, which, as I mentioned, was the PvP, because I feel like the people of the mouse and keyboard have a significant advantage over us three. Stadia.
You know what you do? Put down your controller, mouse and keyboard.
I'm no good with mouse.
But you know what we have, Chris? Do you know what we have in return? We got
Moxie.
Yeah, good old-fashioned Moxie.
Determination.
We've got screen share.
We've got shit banter. That's what we've got.
We got screen share.
But no, yeah, you're right there. Screen share. So that's a feature exclusive to Stadia, which we jumped into, and to our surprise, it worked automatically just off the bat. We signed in, we all created our characters, and I think pretty much as soon as we all joined up and signed into the same lobby together, bang, there it was. I could see your screen, Tom. I could see your screen, Richie, in the bottom right. It was just there.
Yeah, and the UI as well, very customizable. You could move where the screens popped up however you liked it.
It's really quite a nice feature.
Yeah.
Similar to this layout here that we've got. So you could have Richie below us, Tom to my right, your right, depending on how you're looking at this. Right. Who knows? But I thought it added a really good... I know we didn't really... story, but you can see the potential in screen share. Very, very... if we're breaking into a shop that's under house arrest and everybody got hostages and stuff, we could very much pick out our quadrants and how to tackle that, and I think that would be really, really beneficial going forward.
Absolutely. But it seems like we're getting a lot of love from Ubisoft. We keep saying it week after week, but we are getting a lot of love from Ubisoft in terms of how they're supporting Stadia in general. And traditionally, they've always been really supportive of new platforms as well. They've always thrown their hat into the ring as soon as it's come up and said, "Yep, absolutely on board." And at the end of the day, business is business. So if they can make sales on a platform, then they certainly will. But yeah, I just think that it's a great title to have now. It's been a lot of fun to start playing. And I think it's really nice that the way the Stadia community has come together in creating their little clans, which we're all part of now. And we're sort of like building this inclusive community at the moment where everybody sort of starting to get to know everyone. We're starting to play games together with each other, making new friends. And that's what this is all about, really.
Yeah, and I think the great thing now we've got these constantly always live games playing. That's going to be a great opportunity to just widen getting to know people who are also playing the same game.
Absolutely.
I think as well, under the current pandemic as well, people are going to be self-isolating, so playing games together is a good way for these to get these social interactions, which you just can't if you're stuck in your house.
No.
Especially if you live on your own. You could probably go days without seeing anyone. Occasionally seeing a work email come through.
Yeah, and the irony of the Division's storyline is not lost on me as well, with the dollar flu in Division 1, and it spread to other areas of the United States. And there we are, sat in isolation, playing a game about a virus that has, unfortunately, for better or for worse, decimated the population. And we are the Division agents there to pick up the remaining pieces of society. Hopefully it's not going to get that bad in the real world. But yeah, don't really know how to segue away from that one.
It's scarily accurate, isn't it, at the moment? Like, scarily on point.
I'm surprised they actually didn't look at holding it back, because I can imagine like any movie that's about viruses or pandemics or any horrors with infections and stuff, you can almost see the developers of the I've actually contemplated The Last of Us coming out, because that story is heavily based on the human race being affected by a fungus.
That's a fungus, though.
Yeah.
It's decimating the world from some kind of infection, kind of. Just don't eat the mushrooms.
It's not the same thing.
I know, but it's still mass death of humanity.
But like I said before, we have had a lot of support from Ubisoft, haven't we? And particularly with this month, we've had a bunch of new Pro deals, haven't we, Chris?
Yeah, so we've jumped into check that. I don't know if they came before or after the initial Division launch, but I think it was timed alongside it almost. New Pro deal anyway.
Yeah.
Again, massive Ubisoft sale. I know Ubisoft do sales up and down across all platforms, and it's nice to see there's that consistency to Stadia. I know we've seen a few promotions that have kind of glossed over Stadia for other games, and I've seen people in the community go, why is this on sale here, here, and here? I think a good example this week was Tomb Raider, the Definitive Edition, which if you are into that type of thing, we happen to have a Let's Play currently up on our YouTube channel. Episode 8 went live this past Saturday. We have wrapped up shooting on that. We enjoyed the game thoroughly, and you need to stay tuned to check out the end of it. But that was free on Steam this week. Square Enix released Tomb Raider Definitive Edition and Lara Croft The Temple of Osiris for free over on Steam, and I saw loads of people kicking off asking why it wasn't free on Stadia and other platforms. And I don't know, you've just got to kind of take pause and realize that these business deals are brokered with many studios, many developers, publishers, and such. And guess what? It may have, I think people just read too much into it.
Didn't we already get it for free at one point?
Yeah,
it's also the same reason why sometimes you get games on sale on PlayStation and not on Xbox.
Yeah, but again, it's easier to say it with Stadia. But in terms of the actual Pro deals, we got a so we got Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Tom, you and me are big, massive fans of that as well. Dropped it. I was actually tempted by seeing the price down to that. Yeah, dropped it down to £18.15. And I told myself I do not have, even under isolation, I do not have 120 plus hours to put back into another title I've already got a platinum for.
Unless you were trophy hunting on Stadia, which, let's be fair, the achievement system's not great yet, it'd be pointless for you to buy it, I think. I
mean, I enjoyed the game, but in terms of...
But you have it.
Exactly.
It's probably on the shelf behind you.
I mean, actually, the little guy here jumping towards my head, constantly trying to kill me every episode. Spartan from the Collector's Edition of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which we've mentioned in previous episodes. Will Stadia get some kind of collector's set up at some point? Otherwise, if I'm buying Assassin's Creed Ragnarok, or whatever it's called, I'm not getting this guy on Stadia, surely. So, does that sway my vote? Does that send my money elsewhere?
They'll send you a JPEG of it.
Send me a small JPEG of it, yeah.
A badly compressed JPEG where it's just a few pixels short of a complete
Someone's
image.
done it on Paint and actually just stretched it as well in different ways. It's not even in ratio.
But it is a contesting point, you've got to say, because like gamers do love the collectibles. They love the Pop Funko vinyls, the art books, and just look at some of the collectors coming out like for PlayStation with the Final Fantasy sets and Ghost of Tsushima and stuff with the full-on Japanese samurai mask and everything. And I think that it's something they've definitely got to consider further down the line. I know me and you, Richie, thought so. Tom, you didn't think it was so much in the pipeline?
No, I'll be interested to see if they do come up with a plan with it. Again, I'm being optimistic, but I'm also trying to be realistic as well.
Yeah.
So I don't see how it fits into the business model. Yeah.
I don't see why they couldn't. I don't think it would affect anything, to be honest, because if it depends where these are shipped from. If they're shipped from, say, Ubisoft or like a normal retail store, I don't think it's a problem for Google then to just basically put a code on a piece of paper in a box or send an email.
Well, we'll wait and see, won't we? Really, they'll have to address it at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure they will definitely, especially when people, if the community do pick up on why. Again, Ubisoft, who have been big supporters of Stadia so far, don't have the same iterations elsewhere as they do on other platforms. There's no doubt going to be some kind of rise in stories and stuff around them not supporting it on this level now, as well as that, even though they have massively. But yeah,
for me, it's when you get versions of the game that at the moment, the base for Ghost Recon Breakpoint is the gold edition is $84.99, and other platforms that will probably come with some physical paraphernalia. On Stadia, it doesn't. Yeah. So it just seems that is very expensive.
Yeah,
if
your value is different.
Else.
But yeah, in terms of value though, Tom, at £18.15, it almost got me. Just thinking I could jump in because I played through it with Alexia. And obviously, the great thing with Assassin's Creed is you could also play it through it with Cassandra. I'm right in thinking the female, So you could play the whole game again as a different. And it might feel like a different game. Will I approach it differently being a female? I don't know.
It's got RPG elements in there, so you could literally just take a different build.
I do think
exactly.
Cassandra and Alexios as well are rated very highly in the list of overall assassins that are addressed as part of the running series as well. I would rate probably maybe second behind Ezio, perhaps. In terms
Ezio's number one.
Well, God, absolutely.
I'll say it's up there. I know he's only one game, and it was arguably mechanically the weakest.
I would rate it as I'd go Ezio. I'd probably go the Alexios Cassandra combination. They'd probably put Kenway in there. I'd probably put Edward in there. Just because I bloody love. Yeah, I know, but I still love Black Flag. I still love it.
Yeah. You mean there's no space for Connor from Assassin's Creed 3?
Sorry, who?
I can't pronounce his Native American name, but
I wasn't too keen on 3, to be honest with you. I really wasn't keen on it.
I'm currently replaying through the remaster one, and I am also not keen on it, both currently and previously when I've played it. But yeah, that's a good it's a good thing for a sidebar chat. I think one time the best ranked assassins, Desmond, played by one Nolan North. Does he count?
Well.
Who knows?
We'll throw out a spin-off show at some point, I'm thinking, for our Patreons. Maybe we can have these sorts of discussions in that.
Yeah, ranking the assassins of the Assassin's Creed connected universe.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's just one game. Speaking of Just Dance, Richie, who's your Just Dance favourite assassin?
Of all time.
Your favourite dancer of all time?
I'm looking at the image now. I'm liking the guy with like the teal t-shirt.
Okay. Yeah. See, I think I'm more of a yellow woman kind of person, if I'm even thinking of the right image.
I thought you were just going to shout out your favourite dancers of all time.
Dancers? Me?
Michael Flatley? Is he one? He's a dancer, isn't he?
I don't dance. You've seen me dance, Chris. That's not a good sight.
You dance. Wow. Well, it depends how drunk I am.
We're sidebarring far too much, gents. Pro Deals. Let's talk Pro Deals. Come on.
So Pro Deals. Just Dance 2020 was priced down to £27.99, or your respectable local currency. They keep pushing Just Dance on Twitter also. I've seen Stadia pushing it a few times. It's still one that I'm never going to buy because I don't see I know how it translates to Stadia and how the game works, but I've not ever had an inclination to buy Just Dance.
Nope.
It's not for
even
me.
back in the Wii Fit days with the balance board and stuff.
It's one of them games. Either it is for you or it's not.
Is that well? They sell a lot. It still comes out on the Wii, does it not?
Oh yeah, it sells.
They still bring an edition out on the Wii console.
If you're into dancing games, then yeah, it's probably for you. But if you're not, then it's not really anything to bring it in.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint we've also got, which is currently restructure. The Ultimate Edition, like you said, Richie, at $35, and the base model for £19.80. And then finally, Trials Rising has returned to the same sale that I acquired it for 2 months ago, maybe now, I think, at a lowly £8.
Now,
and all these are on sale until the 8th.
From a couple of weeks ago with Trials Rising, because I have at the moment in my Google Rewards account £7.08. If I could pay the rest of my credit card, you get your sale, Google. But since I can't, you don't.
Yeah, there's a fine line between using your and not using it.
They've still not fixed my issue. I'm still sitting on £35, waiting to be used.
It's in the pipeline.
Yeah.
So there's some Pro Deal sales that came out this past week as well. If you are tempted by any of those, by all means jump in. The sale is until April the 1st. So you've got about another week or so to pick up those deals. A few of the games we'd highly recommend on the list at the cheapest price. And I think that links back into what you said on previous episodes, Tom, that when do these games just infinitely become priced down as opposed to just constantly throwing them on there at the sale? Because, if you could have picked up Trials Rising back when I did, or you could have waited a month, bought it at full price, and then once again it's now back down. At what point do you just drop it down to £8?
We've had this ongoing discussion before. It's flip-flopping with these prices, and eventually it's just sort of conditioning us to wait for the sale.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not going to get the sales if you keep changing the prices.
Yeah,
like,
you need some kind
change
of structure.
It. By all means, have a sale and then return it back. But then the next time you do, you've got to think, shit, we probably need to drop it permanently now.
Yeah, I mean, Assassin's Creed Odyssey is going to go back up to £50 after Festive April.
Yeah, great game, but I still don't think it's warranting £50 at this point.
Yeah,
I think
it's over a year old at this point, so certainly not. But wrapping up on all the Pro Deal games, speaking of games, variety, our platform competition for Google Stadia, Stadia's platform competition had their big reveals this kind of last week. We know definitively the specifications of the guys in green, the ex-boss over there, Phil Spencer. They've revealed the Xbox Series X, definitive details, and also we had a very, very long TED Talk with one Mark Cerny from PlayStation over on some weird green screen setup, and we all watched it. I think, did you end up catching it eventually, Richie?
I watched the first 5 minutes and realised why you told me not to bother.
Yeah, me and Tom watched it at the same time. As much as I appreciate what he's trying to do, and Tom, you again being
Yep.
I think I got about 20 seconds in before I realised he was a bona fide genius. I simply just enjoy technology, but know nothing about it.
We bow to you, O technical overlord, because we do not understand what the hell you are spewing right now.
Yeah, and he spoke a lot about, but that brought to light how now they both stack up against Google Stadia. 2019, I think, is the caveat that I'd like to put on it, because again, the specifications of Stadia now are almost to the day a year out of date. Sorry. Tom, do you want to give us a rundown of how the PlayStation 5 officially and the Xbox Series X now stack up against what we currently know of Google Stadia?
Okay, yeah, I'll try to do this in quite a quick and succinct sort of way as well.
Yeah, well, it's not a 52-minute TED Talk.
No.
Yeah.
Tom's techie breakdown.
Yeah.
10 minutes or less.
So yeah, first thing I would like to clarify as well is we don't have the full rundown in terms of the performance of these with specific titles. This is obviously just a comparison of looking at the specs as they've been released, as it's written on paper. Obviously, different specs work differently depending on on a combination of components as well, and there's a lot of factors that go into this. So these are just little caveats that you need to be aware of when we have these discussions too. So, starting at the top. Clear my throat, get ready for it. CPUs, first of all. So we're looking at the central processing unit. This is the brain behind the machine itself. This is where everything happens at its core. Google Stadia, we know from launch, is it uses a 2.7 gigahertz hyper-threaded CPU. What that means is, well, first thing I should add is it's an 8-core CPU. So that means there are 8 of those 2.7 gigahertz hyper-threaded cores. 8 of them. Thank you, gents. We had a visual display of that there. That means that what we can do is when we have a game that's running, the instructions for that game to tell different things to happen visually, behind the scenes and so on, can be split 8 ways. So they can be running 8 things at the same time, or you can split one big job 8 different ways to make that job go quicker. By comparison, the PS5 will be running an 8 times Zen 2 core at 3.5 gigahertz. So quite a lot faster. Gigahertz actually represents the speed that it can process it at. So
and a bit more relaxed as well.
Yeah.
If it been...
By comparison, giga represents a billion. So 3.5 represents 3.5 billion instructions per second times 8. So you've got 8 times 3.5 billion instructions a second. And the Xbox Series X runs 8 cores at 3.8 gigahertz. So again, a little bit faster. A few more million instructions faster right there. So that actually puts Google quite substantially lower in terms of processing power. And that has me a teeny bit worried for the next generation of games coming out. But we've discussed one of the benefits of Google, of Stadia in general, is the fact that they're constantly upgrading their servers anyway.
Yeah, so this was my, again, without your in-depth knowledge of this, Tom, my initial takeaways when I saw them announce it, let's immediately start comparing PlayStation with Xbox. Once again, as every console war iteration ticks over. My biggest takeaway was, on paper, Stadia has now almost fell behind these two behemoths in the gaming industry. And obviously GDC is it is happening at the moment digitally. It's all over. I know Google have a presentation at the time of this podcast releasing. So hopefully we've got Google games developers coming out as of tomorrow / today / yesterday, depending on when. My hope is that the plan for GDC, as Phil Harrison alluded to on his initial announcement, was that Stadia is iterative. They are able to upgrade their parts constantly. So I'm hoping for some big push before these 2 new consoles are out come Christmas holiday season, end of 2020. We're going to see some announcement from Google that says they've upgraded their tech behind the scenes to either match, exceed, or have some kind of explanation as to how they're going to keep up with brand new games that are coming out, and how they're going to match them. I think we've spoke about it off camera. Maybe the current setup can run games that maybe don't require the highest spec, so like indie games and older titles, and maybe upgrades gradually their software for many of the teraflops for the higher AAA games coming day and date with other consoles, and gradually, slowly upgrade their work behind the scenes. But who knows? Who knows? You'd like to hope. They don't want to be left in the dust before the new generation's even out.
I hope you're right, but they haven't even released Stadia Base yet, so they're not even running the service at full capacity.
That's true.
But saying that as well, like, we're looking at CPU, and everyone traditionally looks at the big player there as CPU and GPU. We'll get onto GPU next, but CPU is the brain, it's the processing power behind the scenes, so it's the thing that does the heavy lifting, the hard work, really. And yeah, Google has fallen behind a little bit on that, but Google, knowing the way that they work, knowing what they do out there in the greater world, if they improve the CPU performance for their entire server structure, that can only be beneficial for everything that they do. So I ultimately see them going through that process right there. Now, the question I would like answered, assuming that it hasn't already been, I'll have to do my research on it or put that out there now publicly, is the chipset that's designed for Google Stadia, is it designed with Stadia in mind and gaming in mind, or are we just running on the same chipsets that they use for their servers traditionally? That's what I'd like to know. It's more of a rhetorical question, I suppose, but it'd be interesting to know, really.
I want to feel like that was announced at GDC last year. I think, if memory serves, it might have been a custom chipset.
I recall them mentioning something about it being a custom chipset as well.
Yeah.
But I'd have to go back and watch the reveal video again.
Yeah, I mean, by all means, please comment and let us know as well. I do want to be fact-checked on these things. I do want to be told if I'm getting this wrong as well, only for my own educational sakes as well, just to be able to make sure that I'm putting the right information out there. But swiftly moving on, we'll talk about the graphics power next. because this one's a little bit more interesting. So the PlayStation 5 will come to first once we've addressed Stadia, because I find it quite an interesting comparison here. Stadia at launch runs a custom AMD GPU with 56 CU or compute units, and it is capable of 10.7 teraflops. Now, this is a term that a lot of you may have heard, but don't really completely understand. So
it's very floppy.
Yeah, a flop is essentially, it stands for floating, like a floating point object. So what we mean by that essentially is a floating point is a large mathematical number, essentially. It's not a whole number. It's not like the number 5 or 6. It could be like a decimal number, and it refers to the result of a calculation. Now, within gaming, obviously, you've got to think of every single model, every single texture, and so on, is told mathematically from a computing perspective to move, to change its position, and so on. You've got to think of like the old polygon models and stuff like that. When you turned your character, the polygon would move, and you'd suddenly have something pointing in a different direction. Teraflops just refers to, again, how many trillions of those calculations happen again, or how many it is capable of doing. So,
and from an optics standpoint, this is obviously what I think Mark Cerny at the PlayStation 1 tried to get ahead of, because he's well aware the PlayStation is currently on paper putting out less teraflops than the Xbox is, still more than Stadia is. However, he made a point of spending about, I think, 10 minutes, I think I understood this, within his presentation, explaining that it's how you utilize them, not necessarily how many you have.
yes.
So that I suppose helps Stadia's argument out that even though they're behind on paper, that big number isn't the be-all, end-all. However, my worry is the optics and the way this is published out to the wider general population is the bigger the number, the better, hands down.
But again, I think it's really going to start boiling down to like visual fidelity and what we as humans are actually capable of seeing with the technology we're actually using to witness it and to actually experience ourselves. So it's interesting that the comparison, the number for PS5 has seemed to be a little bit uncertain. I've seen reports of 10.8 teraflops. I've also seen reports of 10.28 teraflops. But the Stadia spec is at 10.7. So depending on which number you take, Stadia is better. Only from a flopping perspective.
Yeah, it's more floppy.
Yeah. And remember, Stadia isn't a flop.
No. It
I just want to point that out right now.
Not now. We're getting some good games. Doom Eternal.
There's a lot of teraflops, but the service is not a flop.
So by comparison, the PS5 is 10.28 is the number that I'm seeing most commonly. So I am going to go with that. And that runs on 36 CUs at 2.23 gigahertz. So again, the number of computing units is important in this, because that's telling you how many individual units can run these 10.7, 10.8, 10.28 teraflops on them. And the 2.23 gigahertz tells us how fast it can do that as well. So it's a combination of all of these calculations, the speed and the number of units that can do it right there. So we don't actually have a report on Stadia's speed for it in terms of gigahertz, but we do know it runs on 56 compute units as well. So the Xbox Series X is arguably going to be, from a visual perspective, from a graphical perspective, far more powerful. It runs at 12 teraflops. It runs on 52 CUs, but it does run on a lower speed, 1.825 gigahertz. So what that means is Series X will look better, but PS5 will run smoother.
So would you say the PS5 would have likely to have a high frame rate?
Yes. That's what you're going to witness. You're going to witness smoother graphics compared to the Xbox Series X. Whereas Stadia, I think we're going to get an interesting middle ground in that, is what I would say. So we get good visual fidelity, but we do get a decent frame rate. The only thing is, obviously, it's still very restrictive based on your internet connection. So that's going to have an impact on how you witness it, really.
That might be the thing with Stadia. That might be why they haven't really released that number, because it might not actually matter in context of, because your internet speed matters so much more for that.
Definitely.
Potentially. I think outside of that, though, for me personally, who's been more of a PlayStation-centric fan up until play the other consoles. I've owned the other consoles, but in terms of my reckoning for all this stuff on paper, it's all great to be touting the best. But I think we've got to remember that all the developers are going to make their games for all platforms. So yes, one may be more powerful, but all the developers who make games for all of them are actually going to have to hit that minimum standard anyway. And then at the end of the day, for me, it's going to boil down to exclusives. It's those exclusive titles which draw the crowds in, and I think on paper, hopefully we've got Stadia coming out with some cracking exclusive in the coming years. Does being the most powerful really matter at the end of the day?
Well, right before we started recording the podcast, I sent you an interesting comparison of the Resident Evil 3 demo, which has just dropped on PS4 and Xbox One. And what we need to remember as well is you're absolutely right with what you just said, Chris, but the Resident Evil 3 demo has been optimized for PlayStation release, not for Xbox release. And the PlayStation version ran with a much smoother frame rate. But again, the Xbox One, current gen, ran more attractive. Like visually, it was better to look at. Marginally, but it was. So it really depends on how games are optimized. And I think what we need to bear in mind with all of this as well is that games are, or when we talk about like the specs of consoles, that it is getting a little bit tiring talking about this console war in terms of what's better and so on, because there is going to come a point where it sort of levels off, where the changes are so minute and so fine that we are not going to be able to physically see them.
I'm genuinely of the opinion that we've already kind of hit that point, at least for me personally, because I think this is almost a personal decision where I only have 1080p screens, so having more and more graphical power behind it isn't actually going to change my experience much. Smoother frame rates, however, would.
Yeah. Load times.
And I do think as well, with the current generation, the Xbox One, the PS4 generation, I think if you go back to that in 10 years' time, they'll be fine to play. Obviously, it won't look as good as the games come out in 10 years' time, but I don't think it'll be so jarring like when you go back to like PlayStation or even PS2 now.
Yeah, and I think the stuff that I've seen from the new announced consoles and how it relates back to Stadia is we've praised it for its load times and its lack of downloads. So when you've played Doom, Tom, when we all played The Division earlier this week, is you go from purchasing the game's on your home screen, play the game, load times minimum, bang, you're into the game straight away. The introduction of SSDs, solid state drives, into these new consoles is going to reduce that. So that is almost a little flag Stadia waving currently. In theory, that's going to be reduced, if not disappear, come the launch of these this new competition.
One thing I was going to add to that point there is obviously we know that now we know that the PS5 and the Xbox Series X are both going to use SSDs internally, but they are very limited in space. You know, the PS5
PlayStation, especially
is an 825 gigabyte SSD. There is the possibility they are now considering like expansion slots for people to add their own SSDs to it, but that's adding an additional cost on top of the console already. And realistically, you look at the size of some games at the moment, you're probably only going to get maybe like 7 to 10 games installed on it at any point during your play cycle. So you are going to have to be very, very picky, particularly for hardcore gamers, as to what you want to keep on, especially if you play games that have updates.
I think you're being quite generous there with 7 to 10, especially if games are, because it's going to be another generation. The games are going to step up in quality, and that means a step up in size as well.
Especially if they go to 4K. I mean, one thing that a lot of people don't fully appreciate is a 1080p video can be gigabytes in size. You move up to a 4K video, and that size increases exponentially. It doesn't double. It's not a direct translation. It doesn't double the number of pixels, therefore it's double in size. There's so much more data to it that comes alongside it. So a game that moves up to 4K doesn't double in size. It actually grows quite dramatically in size. There.
I mean, if you took Doom as an example, that was Doom, the base one is 41 gig on PlayStation, Tom. So there's a chunk of your hard drive gone without any updates or patches. That's just day one.
Yeah, absolutely. But the last thing I want to touch on as well is, with these consoles as well, is the memory usage itself, the RAM. So this is another interesting comparison too. So with Stadia, we have 16 gigabytes of RAM with up to 484 gigabytes per second of performance. So that's the rate that we can transfer data to and from because the closer it gets to the CPU, the faster it can be processed. And RAM is where we hold most of our instructions. So that speed for transfer is important. Okay? The speed of the transfer, the 484 gigabytes per second, is important because that tells us how fast we can transfer data to and from RAM. Okay? PS5, 16 gigabytes of DDR6, GDDR6 RAM, 448 gigabytes per second. So that's down approximately 40 gigabytes per second compared to Stadia. Okay? Slower transfer time. Whether it will matter or not is yet to be tested because we need to see how games utilize the space and how they utilize memory usage. There was a big discussion about that in Mark Cerny's talk. Xbox Series X, you've got 16 gigabytes, again, GDDR6. We have 10 gigabytes running at 560 gigabytes per second, which is vastly ahead. But we've got 6 gigabytes only running at 336 gigabytes per second. So that means, on average, Xbox Series X is running about 467 gigabytes per second, which puts it below Stadia.
Yes, but the one thing I will say is Stadia actually probably has to compute a bit more with it being a streaming service. So some of the RAM will be taken up for that.
And that is very interesting from there because
we
you've got
have
to
no
think,
idea how much.
No. You've got to think about, in terms of system usage as well, how all of these things are utilized too. Because we don't know what other features are going to be included in PS5, what other features are going to be included in Series X yet. We'll have to wait and see. But
Coming soon.
That's a bit of a rundown right there. The only other thing I would add is obviously SSD storage may be very limited on PS5 and on Xbox Series X, but we know, benefit of Stadia, we don't have to give a shit about it.
That is true. No matter what happens, internal memory is not our problem.
Nope.
Storage
is all good.
It's not our problem.
Nope.
Even in the 1 terabyte PlayStation 4, still occasionally you have to delete games.
Absolutely.
It's nice just to not have that in Stadia. Every single game I ever buy will just be there.
Yeah, I am enjoying how, as my library grows, it's just there.
Yeah,
it's just accessible.
Yeah.
I did see something this week. Actually, someone mentioned on hide the games from me. I want to see, which seemed to be quite good, like a little tick box. If you've got an embarrassing game you don't want it to be sat there to stare at, or a game you pick up as a free game you don't want to see.
This goes for PlayStation and Xbox and Switch as well. Just give me the ability to customize my own UI a bit. Some simple tools like setting up folders or whatever.
Yeah, that's what we need. It's a little quality of life change again, isn't it?
It might have been on the original firmware for the Xbox One. You could actually had a pin board where you could pin certain games to it, and it was I think it was limited in size, but you could basically like a favorites list.
Yeah,
something like that would be cool.
Yeah, I mean, any more customization. But then again, anyone who's got a Nintendo Switch out there is waiting to change the home screen from black or white for over 2 years now. So wouldn't hold your breath too much for that.
I'm surprised about that because Nintendo did bring in themes for the 3DS. And I don't know, probably the DS as well. But
one day. But Google and Android are the kings of customization. Many a year now. Hopefully, eventually. But speaking of getting there eventually, we've reached the end of the show, gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to our faces, but I did want to give one last shout out in particular to some people in the Stadia community at the moment. I noticed this week over on the Facebook group, we had a gentleman called Craig who I noticed he bought Stadia online, not through official channels, I don't think, and he was asking about how he can get access to Stadia. And just wanted to point out how good the community is by another gentleman called Chris, who I think is one of our listeners actually. So if you're out there, Chris, you'll know what we're talking about, not me. This isn't just a piece about me. He gave a quick, detailed, and polite response to the guy asking about how he gets online with Stadia. Quite detailed, told him where to go, wanted to collect essentially a Premier Edition. And then very, very shortly after, he was followed by 2 buddy passes were donated to him from a guy called Jonathan and a guy called Carl. And I just want to showcase how generous and nice the community still are out there, and people asking for genuine help. So well done, lads. You're really highlighting how good and how nice this community is still growing into being. A few points before we do finally say goodbye to all of our faces. If you do enjoy watching us talk on camera, go over to YouTube and check out our Tomb Raider Definitive Edition. As I mentioned, we're at 8 now. Part 9 will go live later on this week. We had a blast recording it. We had loads of fun. Do we make a slogan out of it, guys? Did we come up with a special slogan at the end of the
I don't think it's
episode?
in this week's episode.
It's not. It's not in this week's episode, but you'll have to stay tuned to
Maybe.
understand the gravitas of the catchphrase we coin. In regards to other things, we have Tom. You're currently working on the episode of Spitling Spectacular.
We are, yeah, absolutely.
With another special guest.
We have.
We'll
We've
keep
got Duncan from the studio. I'm happy to announce it now, right here, because the Twitter image is going to go out tomorrow. So
there you go.
So
Tomorrow,
if
today,
you
whatever that may be.
know Duncan over from Reddit with the unofficial Stadia updates, Want to Escape over on there is his username, and on Twitter as well. He's a writer over at Stadia Source. He's a fantastic guy, but definitely doing a lot of work behind the scenes for him. We had the opportunity to sit down and play Spitlings with him, and once again, had an absolute blast with it.
Yeah,
we really did. We killed many of those annoying blobs that bounce around and get us. What else have we got, Jens? Podcast comes to you every Monday, live on podcast platforms, now to you in video format.
Yeah.
So hopefully you've enjoyed being able to see us. And that's it from me. My name's been Chris.
I've got a little bit of something to throw out there very quickly. It's not beef.
Okay.
Don't worry, it's not beef.
Oh, it's
but
not beef.
No. It's a quick reminder that, what have we got? March 27th, we've got Lost Words is coming out on Stadia. April the 1st, we now have Stacks on Stacks. On Stacks.
On Stacks.
On Stacks.
Stacks Cubed.
Is coming to Stadia as well. So we've got a couple of games coming very shortly. So keep your eyes open for those guys. More information in the coming week. And I'm sure on Thursday as well, we will finally hear what our April Pro games will be.
Oh, yes. And hopefully we might get some big announcements from the Google's Game Summit today, tomorrow, yesterday, whenever that may be. And hopefully you'll have some reactions from us as well over on our Twitter channels, which is twitter.com/Sounds of Stadia. And like I said, if you like the video, subscribe down below. We'd really do appreciate bumping those numbers up because it helps us. So we'd really appreciate that as well. And I'll try one more time. My name's been Chris.
I've been Tom.
I've been Richie.
We've been Sounds of Stadia, everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching and listening. Goodbye.